In the spring of 1979, a man checked into a run-down hotel in West Beirut using a name that was not his own. He had been using fake names for 18 months, moving between safe houses like a chess piece sliding across a board that kept changing beneath him. What he did not know was that Israeli intelligence had already placed their own pieces on that same board, and they were closing in. Salem Hamdi was an engineer of death, not the kind who pulled triggers or wore explosive vests. He was something more dangerous, a craftsman who understood exactly how to turn everyday materials into weapons that could shred human bodies in crowded marketplaces. Over 6 years, his workshop had produced 37 devices. Each one bore his signature techniques, each one designed with a single purpose: maximum casualties. 23 people died because of bombs he built, 23 lives erased in Tel Aviv bus stations and Jerusalem shopping districts. Men, women, children going about ordinary days that ended in fire and flying metal. Israel's intelligence community gave him a code name. They called him the Clockmaker, and they had been hunting him since 1973. The year 1979 found Beirut drowning in its own violence. 4 years into a civil war that would eventually consume 15 years, the city had been transformed from a cosmopolitan jewel into a fractured landscape of warring territories. The so-called Green Line cut through the urban core, separating Christian neighborhoods to the east from Muslim districts to the west. But that simple division hid a far more complex reality. Palestinian militias controlled entire sectors, Syrian troops occupied key positions, Druze fighters, Shiite militias, Sunni groups, and Maronite Christian factions each carved out their own fiefdoms. Territory changed hands with every temporary ceasefire and every new betrayal. Car bombs detonated with such regularity that residents learned to distinguish between different explosive types by their sound signatures. For someone running from powerful enemies, this chaos offered something precious. In a city where violence was the background noise of daily life, where intelligence services from a dozen nations operated in the shadows, one more corpse would barely register. Beirut had become a sanctuary for those fleeing justice, and a killing ground for those sent to dispense it. Hamdi had vanished into this mayhem 18 months before, slipping out of the West Bank just hours before Israeli forces arrived to arrest him. He had crossed into Jordan first, then made his way through a network of sympathetic governments and underground safe houses. He moved through Syria, then Libya, and finally into Lebanon, where he disappeared into the Palestinian refugee camps that sprawled around Beirut's periphery. For a year and a half, Mossad's operatives followed a trail of whispers and secondhand reports. Each tip arrived just a bit too late. By the time agents reached a location, Hamdi had already moved on. He understood tradecraft. He never stayed anywhere longer than a few nights. He never used the same contact twice. He trusted no one beyond his inner circle. The man knew people were hunting him, and he behaved accordingly. Then, in January of 1979, something changed. A minor informant working in one of the Palestinian camps mentioned hearing about a technician who had taken up residence in a hotel somewhere in the Hamra district. This neighborhood had once been fashionable, a place where intellectuals gathered in cafes and tourists strolled tree-lined streets. The war had stripped away that glamour, leaving behind a shabby remnant of former elegance. The informant could not provide a name, but certain details stood out. Local PLO representatives treated this man with unusual respect. He rarely emerged from his room during daytime hours. It was not much, but it matched patterns. Mossad dispatched a team to investigate. Hamdi's story began in 1941 in Deir Yassin, a village west of Jerusalem. He was 7 years old when that village became a battlefield during the 1948 war. The experience marked him permanently. His family fled to a refugee camp near Ramallah, where Salem spent his childhood in conditions of poverty that fed anger, which eventually calcified into ideology. But unlike many young Palestinians who channeled their rage into politics or direct combat, Hamdi discovered something else. He had a gift for understanding mechanical systems, how components fit together, how circuits completed, how devices could be engineered to fail in precisely calculated ways. By his early 20s, Palestinian militant organizations recognized this talent's value. His education came from multiple sources: self-taught experimentation, training sessions in Egypt, and advanced instruction at Soviet facilities where the KGB ran programs for promising candidates from liberation movements worldwide. He studied blast physics, detonation chemistry, and timing mechanism engineering. He learned how to maximize fragmentation patterns, how to defeat bomb disposal protocols, and how to construct devices that could slip past detection equipment. By the early 70s, Hamdi had become an irreplaceable technical asset. He did not personally plant the devices. That work fell to operatives willing to accept more direct risks. But he designed every component, built every mechanism, and trained every deployer. Israeli bomb disposal experts began recognizing his methods, including innovations in trigger design, particular ways of concealing explosives, and a distinct approach to timing circuits. Forensic analysis of a Jerusalem supermarket bombing in 1973 first connected his work to a specific individual. Over the following years, investigators linked at least a dozen attacks to his techniques. Each incident showed evolution in his methods and growing sophistication. A pattern emerged, and patterns can be traced. When Israeli leadership decided on elimination rather than capture, the reasoning was strategic. Extracting him from hostile territory would require a complex operation with high casualty risks. Even if successful, a public trial would create a propaganda platform and potentially expose intelligence methods. A permanent solution was cleaner, and it sent a message to others who might consider walking the same path. The assignment went to Syria, Mossad's covert action division, specifically to a team with Lebanese operational experience. Their leader, identified only as David in operational records, had conducted 3 prior missions in Beirut. He understood the city's rhythms, its dangers, and its vulnerabilities. Confirmation came first. The informant had pointed to Hamra, but dozens of hotels operated in that district. They ranged from faded grand establishments to hourly rate operations. The team needed precise identification before planning could advance. 2 operatives entered Beirut in early February, traveling on European passports and presenting themselves as journalists covering the civil war. This cover was common enough to avoid suspicion, while providing legitimate reasons to move around and ask questions. They checked into a hotel in the Christian Eastern sector and began systematic searching. 3 weeks of methodical investigation followed. They visited hotels throughout Hamra using various pretexts. They posed as travelers seeking accommodations, as businessmen looking for meeting spaces, and as researchers compiling hospitality guides. They observed security arrangements, noted staff nervousness around strangers, and identified establishments with the feel of places where secrets might hide. One location emerged as the strongest candidate. The Hotel Alexandria sat on a side street off Rue Hamra, a 7-story structure dating to the 1930s. The facade bore soot stains and shrapnel pockmarks. The lobby remained perpetually dim, its chandelier missing bulbs and its furniture worn threadbare. The elevator functioned intermittently, and the stairs were narrow and poorly lit. But certain features made it attractive to someone in hiding. The owner had Palestinian sympathies. Staff asked no questions. The building's layout provided multiple entrances and a rear courtyard connecting to adjacent buildings, offering multiple escape routes for anyone who might need them. And its very deterioration provided camouflage. No one would expect a valuable target to hide in such a place. Surveillance began in late February. The team rented an apartment across the street with views of the hotel's main entrance. They photographed everyone entering and exiting, built profiles, cataloged patterns, and created a picture of the hotel's daily rhythms. March 3rd brought confirmation. A man matching Hamdi's description emerged from the hotel's main entrance at dusk. The surveillance photographs went to Tel Aviv for analysis. Facial recognition specialists compared bone structure ratios. Gait analysts studied his walking patterns. After 48 hours, confirmation came back. Positive identification, Salem Hamdi, room 317. Planning began immediately. The team expanded to 6 operatives, all veterans of similar operations. They studied building layouts, mapped escape routes, identified Lebanese security force patrol schedules, and established fallback positions. Everything was rehearsed in mock-ups until every movement became automatic. The weapon selection process focused on reliability and noise suppression. They chose a Beretta pistol with a suppressor, knowing that even suppressed firearms are not truly silent, but can reduce sound enough to avoid immediate alarm in a chaotic city where gunfire was common background noise. The approach path was planned meticulously, with entry through the hotel's rear courtyard, and stairs chosen rather than the unreliable elevator. A guard posted outside Hamdi's door would need to be neutralized silently. Entry into the room had to be rapid, allowing no time for the target to react or reach any potential weapons or communication devices. They selected March 21st for execution. Intelligence indicated Hamdi had no meeting scheduled. Weather forecasts predicted overcast conditions, reducing visibility. A Syrian military checkpoint on the adjacent street would be changing shifts during the operational window, creating a brief period of reduced surveillance. At 11:30 p.m. on March 21st, the operation began. 2 operatives entered through the rear courtyard. 2 more established observation positions covering the building's exits. The final 2 remained with vehicles positioned for rapid extraction, engines running, ready to navigate pre-planned escape routes. The team inside moved up the stairs with practiced silence, years of training compressed into each careful step. On the 3rd floor, they encountered exactly what reconnaissance had predicted. A man sat in a chair outside room 317. He wore casual clothes, but held himself with the posture of someone doing security work. The lead operative approached from the stairwell, moving with controlled casualness, as if he belonged in the building. The guard began to rise. Before he could fully stand, the operative was on him. One hand covered the guard's mouth while the other delivered precise strikes to the carotid artery. The guard slumped unconscious within seconds. Non-lethal force. Unnecessary killing creates complications. The second operative positioned himself at the door while his partner readied the suppressed Beretta. They had practiced forced entry countless times. The door's lock mechanism was standard, easily defeated. One sharp kick near the handle. The door burst inward. Both operatives entered in smooth sequence. Hamdi sat at a small desk working by lamplight, papers scattered before him, drawings, calculations, designs for devices not yet built. He looked up as the door crashed open. In the half-second before the inevitable, his expression registered not surprise, but something closer to resignation, as if he had known this moment would eventually arrive. The first operative fired 3 times, center mass, standard protocol. The suppressed shot sounded like hard slaps. Hamdi fell backward in his chair, struck the wall behind him, and slid to the floor. The second operative moved to confirm. No pulse. Target eliminated. They did not linger. The operative who had subdued the guard dragged him into the room and tied him securely. The team gathered Hamdi's documents, stuffed them into a bag, and backed out of the room, closing the damaged door as much as possible. From entry to exit, the entire sequence consumed less than 3 minutes. They descended the stairs as calmly as they had climbed them. They exited through the rear courtyard. They walked with deliberate normalness to the extraction vehicles. Within 6 minutes of the first shot, they were moving through Beirut's nighttime streets toward the Christian sector. Within 2 hours, they had crossed into Israel. The body remained undiscovered until the following morning. When hotel staff eventually entered room 317, they found Salem Hamdi's corpse and a bound guard just regaining consciousness. Lebanese authorities investigated perfunctorily. In a city where death arrived daily in various forms, one more corpse merited little attention. The Palestinian organizations that had employed Hamdi issued statements condemning the assassination. They knew who was responsible even without evidence, but knowing and proving are different things. In Tel Aviv, the operation received the classified designation Night Mechanic. Internal reports noted mission objectives achieved without friendly casualties. Operational security was maintained. Documents recovered from Hamdi's room revealed plans for future devices, including innovations in remote detonation that could have made future attacks even more devastating. From an intelligence standpoint, the operation was considered highly successful. But measuring such operations requires complex calculus. Hamdi had enabled the deaths of 23 people. His elimination potentially prevented future attacks. Yet his death also became a rallying point for Palestinian groups who portrayed him as a martyred technician serving his people's cause. Each side counts its dead. Each side justifies its actions by referencing the other's crimes. Neither side concedes moral high ground. What remains beyond justifications is the simple fact of what occurred in that room. A man who had dedicated his talents to causing death met his own end at the hands of those dedicated to stopping him. Tools differed, methods differed. The outcome was identical. A life extinguished. A war continuing without pause. The operatives who executed Night Mechanic never spoke publicly about what happened. They remained bound by secrecy oaths that will outlast them. Whatever they felt, whatever memories visited them in subsequent years, they kept private. That discipline is part of what made the operation possible. Somewhere tonight, in some city torn by conflict or haunted by the threat of violence, operatives are watching, planning, waiting. Somewhere a target goes about his business, unaware he is identified, that his movements are tracked, that his time is being measured. Somewhere a decision is being made about whether he will live or die, and if death is chosen, how and when and by whose hand. Watching. This is our world's reality. Behind headlines and diplomatic statements, behind treaties and negotiations, exists a shadow realm where different rules apply. In that realm, men like Salem Hamdi build weapons, and men like those who killed him hunt the builders. The struggle is endless. Victories are temporary. Costs are measured in human lives on every side of every line. The Hotel Alexandria collapsed during later shelling in 1982. But the story of what happened there persists, passed through intelligence briefings, whispered among those who know such things, preserved in institutional memory of organizations whose very existence gets officially denied. It is a story about skill and patience, about determination and ruthlessness, about lengths nations will go to protect citizens and punish enemies. It persists. It is a story without heroes. Only protagonists and antagonists whose roles depend entirely on which side you stand. A story that did not begin that March night and did not end when the last operative crossed to safety. 3 minutes. That is how long it took. 3 minutes to climb stairs, neutralize a guard, enter a room, and end the career of the most dangerous bomb maker the Palestinians had ever produced. 6 years of hunting, 18 months of tracking, weeks of planning, 3 minutes of execution, then silence. You can run, but the people hunting you are patient, and when they finally find you, 3 minutes is all it takes. What do you think was the most significant covert operation in Middle Eastern history? Share your thoughts below. If this story held your attention, subscribe. More stories like this are coming.